And we welcome you into the best podcast available, Tuesday, June the 2nd, 2020, officially into the month of June. I'm Jason Gibbs alongside Andrew Gribble, and going to go through some of the headlines taking the NFL by storm. But unfortunately, a tough weekend for our city, for our state, and our country. And just kind of, it sucked this weekend. It was devastating to see what was going on, especially in the downtown Cleveland community and all across the country. A lot of pain, a lot of anger, a sad and scary time. And, you know, there is no place for racism, but we got to find a way to be decent to one another and to respect one another. And just a rough weekend and a tough start to the work week as we get things rolling here, Gribbs.
Yeah, let's hope we're on the path to healing. And I imagine this is not going to be a quick process. These things never are. But you know, we just, as a country, as a city, I just hope we can get through this. And I think that it's pretty nuanced in that I understand the anger, the frustration. I'll never truly fully because I've never experienced, you know, the anger and the frustration that I know African American people feel during this time. It's just it's tough. So I hope we're on the path to moving in a better direction, and hopefully things quiet down a little bit, but maybe some more action in terms of policies, things like that can kind of start moving in the right direction for this country.
We are back in the building, not Gribble, not myself. Jeff McDaniel, who's producing this podcast, is back in the building. Want to shout out University Hospitals for all of their hard work. A lot of meetings with a lot of people that make a lot more money than Gribble and I, coming up with a game plan to get us back up and running. A lot of NFL facilities around the league starting to open up this week, limited, but it is a good sign to see as we get into June, and really the countdown is on to the start of training camp and the 2020 NFL season. But shout out to University Hospitals, Gribbs, and the first batch of teammates of ours are back in the building. No coaches, no players, but working our way towards that here in 2020.
Yeah, step in the right direction. I think it's hard to believe. It's one of those things where it's like, I can't believe it's been more than 2 months since we've been out of the office, but I also can't believe it's only been 2 months, because I feel like this has just been the way of life now for I mean, the combine feels like it was 5 years ago. I mean, that was maybe for all of us. I was talking to Paul Taylor about this, kind of the last maybe feelings of normalcy, where we were in Indianapolis, in crowded restaurants, you know, in all those kind of situations, and you came home here and things really started to escalate. So it's one slow movement back to normalcy. And I think that might not have been what we all expected a couple months ago when we were told to leave the office, that, you know, we all thought, oh, we'll just all come back on a certain day. Like, no, this is a process, and it's going to be a process for a long time. But hopefully everything goes well, and more of us can be there and ultimately get to a point where the vast majority of us are back to work and feeling like our normal selves again.
Yeah. Let's hope that happens sooner rather than later. A couple rule updates. Last week we talked about it. They were going in for a vote. The owners were getting ready to vote on a number of things. It was interesting because, you know, with a lot of our podcast, we pre-tape certain segments. And we pre-taped a segment that changed probably 2 or 3 different times before finally going for a vote. And that was the Sky Judge. Do they not have it? Do they have it? And ultimately, the test run will come in the preseason, regular season to be determined. But the owner's still not buying in on the Sky Judge fully.
Yeah, and I don't know if I got the full explanation on that. Maybe is it just too short of a window to maybe implement such a dramatic change to the game? I mean, this is, of all the off seasons, maybe you're not trying to rock the boat as much like this off season when things are just not normal to begin with. But I do think it'll be good that it gets test run here. I think that it's just we've all been there in the preseason though, Gibbs. I mean, the gravity is just not there. So I just wonder how you're going to get really a fair read on the magnitude of some of the decisions in a situation where no one cares what's going to happen if one call goes one way or the other. I think that's where it can be helpful that you're testing it out in the preseason, but also I think with anything, your real test is going to be when the game's on the line and you're going to a situation where that judge is making a decision.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know what kind of reading or what kind of feel you get for a sky judge when the game already in the second quarter doesn't matter. Forget about like the fourth preseason game.
I think the big thing might be the timing. Like, how do you work the judge in without slowing the game? Maybe that's where you test this out in the preseason. And part of me wonders, maybe they should have just tested out this pass interference rule in the preseason and not kept it going into the regular season. Maybe this could be this step in the direction where let's make the preseason as weird as possible. Let's try out a bunch of different things, see what sticks, see what maybe can work for the next year. So maybe this could be the start of us testing out something new every year in the preseason. That might spice it up a little bit more.
The NFL did not approve the proposal to add an alternative to the onside kick for a scoring team to retain possession of the football. That would have been the 4th and 15 play from the 25-yard line in lieu of the onside kick, and they could do it up to twice a game. However, the rule did not achieve the 75% approval margin required to go into effect. It did get a 50-50 split, so there's a little bit of traction there. I don't think it's totally dead going forward, but for this season, it will not be in play.
Yeah, and I think as we indicated last week, this doesn't surprise me because I think that it would have been fun. And I just think it just doesn't, it just seems very opposite of the way the NFL moves with certain things. I just think that I would foresee a much more incremental step instead of really jazzing things up with this kind of rule change. So I think I'm a little disappointed that we're not seeing this, but this would be another rule I'd love to see in the preseason. Like this, I don't know why you can't test this out, see how it goes.
That's a great point.
In the preseason and see what kind of success you have with teams doing it or not. But it'll be interesting to see once they go through another season though of these onside kicks being just so anticlimactic. I mean, I think they're going to still need to figure out a way to make those better because it went from one of the most thrilling plays of the game to one of the least. It's now almost on the same level of the old extra point. I mean, the end result of these things.
Yeah, no question. One rule that did pass that a lot of people weren't talking about was the expansion of the number of players who can return from injured reserve during a season. Number is increased from 2 to 3 for 2020. However, it appears that this is still only applicable to players placed on IR after being on the active 53-man roster following final cuts. But 2 to 3 is big. I mean, the last couple of years, the Browns have had some decisions to make. They've had more than the 2 guys, and 3 would have helped them a little bit.
Yeah, I like it. I think that it's one of those case by case, year by year, you might not need it, but there are certain years where you could use it a few times. And I think that it's weird because ultimately when you make one person's decision, you find out the status of another player because you can't use that decision again. So I'm all for more opportunities of getting guys back on the field and not having to worry about a lot of roster gymnastics that ultimately just hinders the product on field. I think if a guy wants to play, he's ready to play. I think you should accommodate and try to get those guys back. And I think that I think 3 is probably enough. I can't imagine. I mean, maybe you would need 4 in a year, but 3 seems good. And in a position where, I mean, we're just a couple of years removed right from this just being 1. So I think this is a lot of progress to get this back up to 3. And I think teams will appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that with the boosted roster numbers, 2 positive things that come out of the CBA passing and the rules adjustment. I think GMs, coaches, this will help their teams, and it also makes the case for that 17th game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Anything to pad that argument. I think there's a lot more understandable roster flexibility decisions that will go into it, and I think that's good. I think you make it as flexible as possible. Ultimately, to not only incentivize teams from using the injured reserve, but it creates more opportunities for other players to get on the roster, make the rosters bigger. I'm fine with all that. I think there's more opportunities out there for some of these bottom roster guys, and I'm all for getting guys in the league and getting experience that way.
All right, the other as we move on here, the rules done, and we'll see how things play out. Peter King on his Football Morning in America article out every Monday. I keep thinking it's MMQB. It's not MMQB. It's Football Morning in America. His direct words, not mine. Today I'm engaging in the annual exercise of idiocy that has no official name. I call it ranking the teams from 1 to 32 after the offseason, aka the NFL Power Rankings. So take that with a grain of sand. He has his rankings out post-draft, post-free agency. And the first thing that comes out, obviously, you scroll down, and you're looking for the Browns, nothing at 10, nothing at 12, 14, no. How about 17 or 18? No. You got to be around 20. No. 22, 23. Number 24. And Peter King in a full show me before I rank you any higher mood when he talks about the Cleveland Browns. At the end of it, I have Cleveland down in another region because I need to see Baker Mayfield be a consistent player. Are you surprised at number 24 that the Browns are ranked there, especially with some of the teams in front of them, aka the Chargers, Denver, Miami, Chicago, Arizona? Any of those? I was a little surprised by that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with this ranking. I would definitely leapfrog the Browns over the Chargers, who are right in front of them, and a handful of other teams. I just disagree. I think that, though, in saying that, I can understand if that's his reasoning, then that is a ranking that could potentially make sense, because I think a lot of us are understandably assuming that Baker Mayfield will be much better next year because of these moves and because of the support system and because of all that, because we've seen him perform at this level. I think he's making the assumption that you have to see it before you can assume it. And I think when you make the assumption that Baker Mayfield's going to be at a higher level, then I think that the Browns are right, probably about 8 to 10 spots higher in most rankings based on what you've seen so far. And I think so. I understand the reasoning. I just don't agree with it.
Yeah, and I'm fine. I don't think it needs to be a huge jump. I'm not saying they have to be one of the top 15 teams. I think they should be, but I understand coming off of the year that they had that people are gun shy to put them in the top 15, but certainly in the top 20. I would expect the Browns to be, and I just there's a lot of love outside of the love for Pittsburgh, which I'm a little bit confused by because we really don't know what Big Ben is going to be or what that arm is going to look like here in 2020. I'm maybe more confused about Denver's ranking and why everybody is on the love train for the Denver Broncos here in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, I think that ranking, and honestly, the Dolphins one is the one that puzzles me a lot at 19, because I don't know if that's what the Dolphins want. Like, I mean, is that the plan? I mean, I felt like a lot of their draft picks were decisions that weren't meant for 2020. I mean, you drafted Tua Tagovailoa, you draft a young offensive lineman. I mean, you're drafting guys that are pieces that have a lot of talent, but not necessarily guys that are going to be making you better in 2020. So those are the ones I'm a little bit puzzled with, but especially the teams like the Chargers and Dolphins and Broncos that have similar, if not more, uncertain questions at quarterback. That's where I'll nitpick his rankings there.
The other recommendation I would put for Browns fans is to keep track of Chris Sims on Twitter, NBC Sports, Pro Football Talk in the morning with Mike Florio. Does a really nice job, and he's underway in his top 40 quarterbacks of 2020. And something that I know that was discussed on Cleveland Browns Daily on Monday, but he has our backup quarterback at number 32, and he has him ahead of a number of quarterbacks from around the NFL, including Dwayne Haskins, Tua Tagovailoa. He's got Nick Foles just one spot ahead. I mean, I don't think it can be stated enough how important in this day and age it is to have a quality backup quarterback, a quarterback that knows the system you're running, and a guy that is a veteran and a leader. And the Browns have that. And especially, we have no idea what this COVID-19 situation is going to be. God forbid someone comes down with it and the starter's got to go into quarantine for 2 weeks, and you need a quarterback. The Browns have one.
Yeah, and it's a signing that almost a lot of us have stopped talking about since the day it happened, just because there were so many other moves. And no, I think that, as Baker mentioned last week, I think Case is going to be good for that room, good for him, and helping with any asset you can have to help expedite this install during these unique circumstances. I think is going to be huge. And I think it's good to not only have a guy like Case who knows the system, but he had his most success in that system by far in his career. And so I think that we'll see over the next couple months just how valuable he could be in this room and really helping Baker along.
Yeah, again, Case Keenum, we talk about a lot of the free agents and the draft acquisitions. None might be bigger this year than Case Keenum in a Cleveland Browns uniform. And that's not to say that he's going to play. He may never even see the field. And frankly, I think that's kind of the hope from all of us, is that he's not seeing the field, and that Baker Mayfield, unless it's in a blowout situation. But to have his leadership and have his understanding of the game and know what Kevin Stefanski wants cannot be overstated enough. In terms of the rest of those power rankings, number 1 obviously was Kansas City. Number 2 was Baltimore. 3 was New Orleans. 4 the 49ers. 5 Tampa Bay. Thoughts on that one there, Mr. Buccaneer?
I mean, my opinions about this team have been well documented in this airspace.
I think it's a little generous.
Yeah, and I just think it's. I mean, every team there's a team every offseason, and I think there's understandable excitement about this team, and I think to give him credit, the names that he's mentioning here in the second paragraph are the reasons they should be excited, and those are the guys on defense. Like that's what's going to get them over the hump if they're going to be really this good in 2020. Just because I think that Tom Brady makes them better. I don't know if he makes them an elite team in the NFC. I don't know what Gronk gives you in 2020 after taking a year off and the year before that not being all that good anyways. So it's going to be about what that young defense does, which they've added a lot of pieces. They brought back Shaq Barrett. I mean, there's a lot to like, but that level of their team has to take a leap because that's how most of the great teams that Tom Brady led in New England did it. They did it with defense, offense, and special teams. And for Tampa Bay is in a tough division. I think 5 is generous. I need like Peter King with Baker Mayfield. I need to see it before I can truly believe it.
Yep. I think the 2 teams in the top 10 that left me scratching my head a little bit, and I guess it's just me. I think Tennessee got hot at the right time last year.
Yeah.
I think they're a good team. I don't think they're a great team. I don't know if they're a top 10 team. They came in at number 7, and the Raiders at number 8. I'm really scratching my head because I'm not sure what to think of the Raiders right now, one way or the other. I mean, I could be totally wrong on them, but I don't know what to make of them. But I certainly don't think they're better than Dallas. I don't know if they're better than Minnesota or Green Bay or even Buffalo, who he has 13th, which I was really kind of scratching my head at.
Yeah, I mean, for them, it's a combination of I don't know what they've got on defense that makes me excited in with the Raiders, and they still got the same quarterback situation that they don't seem too thrilled with, and I just don't know if they're also in a really tough division that I think is going to make life difficult on them as well. I would put the Raiders probably in the same grouping as I would the Browns at this point. We're hoping to crack into the playoff group this year, and I'm not ready to enter a season just putting you in the top 8. I just can't do that right now.
No, I agree with that. So take a look at it. Football Morning in America on profootballtalk.com. Check that out. Peter King's post-draft and free agency power rankings are out. And again, the Browns, they need to show people, especially the national media, after last year's 6-10 season. Final takeaways here. Todd McShay from ESPN with his way too early top 32 prospects for 2021. This is a draft podcast. We've obviously branched out a little bit in the days and months since the draft. But the big takeaways kind of broke things down in terms of the numbers. And yeah, there's a couple two safeties, there's a tight end, there's a couple running backs, but the numbers really come on the offensive side of the football. 3 quarterbacks, 8 wide receivers, again coming off of a big year, 4 offensive tackles, and on the defensive side, 4 corners, 4 linebackers, 4 defensive tackles. So pretty balanced on the defensive side of things, but 8 wide receivers, a lot of wideouts yet again. Pretty surprising in back-to-back years that you would have those kinds of numbers.
Yeah, I want to know what the deep dive story and the reasoning is for that. Like, is it something kids are doing with 7-on-7s? Is it something about the NFL that's finally adjusting and figuring out that they need more guys at this position? I think I think this past year was historic, and it would be nuts to have it happen again. And you wonder, will the demand at the wide receiver position diminish, or will there still be the same kind of thirst for more players at that position as there was last year? So we'll just have to see, and I'm sure these things change. I mean, there's been some comical early draft predictions that ultimately have a few guys that make it into the 2nd or 3rd round. So we'll see how this goes, but this is how we test the true draft gurus. If they nail these guys now, then they're pretty good at what they do.
Yeah, it was interesting. The 3 quarterbacks, Ohio State, obviously, with Fields, Clemson, and their star quarterback, and then a QB from North Dakota State going in the top 5. So, or ranked as one of the top 5 players, not going, but one of the top 5. So that was interesting. Again, a lot of wide receivers. There was a nice little run on defensive players through the middle of his rankings. But a lot of things to look at, but starting to take a little bit of a nod. And it's good to see that stuff, especially because we don't really know what's going to happen with college football here in 2020, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, anything really could happen. I mean, it's the NFL. We've got a pretty good feeling with what they're going to do. I mean, I think that you can do this without fans, with small amount of fans, but college football, there's a lot of people and a lot of different organizations that have to make these decisions. The NFL is one kind of overall governing body and can make everyone kind of fall in line pretty quickly. But I've liked the momentum of the past month, and I think we're heading in a good direction with both college football and the NFL.
Yeah. All right. That's a look at what's been happening around the NFL and college football through since we last talked to you about 4 or 5 days ago. This is episode number 28. We hope you and your family and your loved ones are staying safe during this time. Again, I would just urge people, restraint. It's fine to protest. It's totally fine. It isn't fine to burn and loot the places that we all love to visit and that are a big part of all of our lives, and places that we need. Would urge you to protest. You have every right to. And again, our thoughts and our prayers are with all the people that are involved in this. It has been tough, and things hopefully will start to get better, but a lot of conversation has to happen between now and then. Coming up on Thursday's podcast, we start to get to know the guys that are in the front office. There's a lot of new faces, and we'll start to break those down. Glenn Cook, he's a regular. He's been around for a little bit with this football team, but a new promotion. He's now the vice president of player personnel, and he will join us on Thursday's best podcast available. We're excited. He's one of the better guys that you'll ever get a chance to meet and to talk to. A really, really good guy who knows his stuff. And Andrew Berry knows that he's got a great eye for talent, and that's why the promotion, the vice president of player personnel. Looking forward to having him on Thursday's podcast. Make sure you log on to clevelandbrowns.com or wherever you get your podcast. Like and subscribe today to the best podcast available. You can also check us out on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Browns. For Andrew Gribble and Jeff McDaniel, I'm Jason Gibbs. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to the best podcast available.